Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my presentation on Learning to Learn, a key to understanding effective ways of learning. This lecture is inspired by the work of Jonathan Lasky and others who have done outstanding work in terms of removing many erroneous beliefs in the learning process and techniques. We talk about various techniques that a student can use which can boost his learning. To begin with, we have a problem. This data is primarily from United States, but could also be applied to students from other countries. An assessment was conducted by National Assessment of Education in Progress in the year 2009, and this assessment was conducted to both 8th graders and 12th graders. To start with, this was a question asked to 8th graders. Kelly slides a flat rock across the smooth ice of frozen pond. The rock slows down after several seconds. What causes the rock to slow down? There are many answers to these questions, and many kids could not answer to questions like this. Similar questions from subjects of mathematics, science, history, and reading, and many other domains were posed to the students. And this is what was found. This is a statistical plot which is going to classify students into four categories, where students are having advanced level of proficiencies, students who are proficient, students who have basic proficiency, or students who have below basic proficiency. What the sad part of the survey is we find that 30% of the 8th graders aren't even achieving a basic level of proficiency, and this is not good for students. We are leaving most of the students behind in the field of education. The similar survey was conducted to 12th graders with similar questions, and this was what found out, and the results were no better than the survey result for the 8th graders. More than 30% of the students are having below basic level proficiency, and this is a troubling aspect. Today we'll talk about what are the various skills that can improve a student's performance. We are going to talk about evidence-based education. We are going in an excellent book by John Hattie, Visible Learning. Hattie reviewed 138 factors and the degree to which they relate to student learning, and this is what Hattie has found out. I cannot discuss all 138 factors. I first discussed the factors which have minor influence. Two factors which have very minor influence are class size. Smaller class size doesn't necessarily guarantee any better student achievement. What is even more surprising is teacher training. How well a teacher student trained, that does have a visible impact on the learning of the student. But look at the factors which have tremendous amount of influence on student learning. Number one is obtaining formative evaluation, where teacher tries to understand the level of students and caters his education based on the level or understanding of the students. Reciprocal teaching, wherein student becomes a teacher. Distributive practice, instead of studying in continuous sessions, students distributes it over a period of time. Metacognitive strategies, study skills, these all have tremendous study skills help student. Jonathan Lasky, Rawson, Marsh, Nathan, Willingham have all done this extensive work, spreading across for more than 3 years, in terms of what are the techniques which primarily help student in improve learning. One key aspect of these techniques is they have not included any technique which involves technology, because technology will not be available for everybody. Before discussing let's try to understand what various techniques. Their elaborative interrogation is generating an explanation for why an explicit stated fact or concept is true. It's rather getting in depth into the subject. Self-explanation is where a student tries to explain himself in the form of steps, analyzes the problem. Summarization, write summaries for the he's learning. Highlighting and underlining, marking potentially important portions of to be learned material while reading. keyword mnemonic, using keywords and mental imagery to associate verbal materials. Using mental imagery to associate verbal materials. Imagery for text, attempting to form mental images of text materials while reading or listening. Rereading, studying the text time and again is rereading. Practice testing is you test, you take practice tests. Tests can be different types. Distributed practice is instead of doing it continuously in one session, you space yourself, your learning. Instead of studying continuously for 4 hours, you study for 1 hour, give a day's time, then you come back study for 1 more hour, same material for 1 more hour. The next day you study same material for 1 more hour. The next day you study for same material. That is distributive practice. Interleaved practice is where you mix different kinds of problems or schedule a study that mixes different kinds of material. Instead of studying mathematics continuously one session, you study mathematics, you study physics, you study chemistry. That is interleaved practice. Students were asked what is the learning they use, the technique they used, and the survey was conducted in Washington University to the elite group of students. Most of them said they reread. Some of the students also said they use flashcards, but others said they do practice problems, but most of the students said they will reread. And this is what the study has found. What troubles is two factors which are tremendous impact on your learning ability is practice testing and distributive practice. When you take tests, when you spread your study sessions across the time, that is tremendously going to impact your performance. The next important thing in retrieval practice, when we are talking about retrieval practice, we are talking about test taking, plain test taking. Test taking can be of different types: multiple choice test, fill in the blanks test, essay type recall test. An interesting study was done by Karpik and others in 2009. What Karpik and others did was they took experimented students who are learning Swahili language, Swahili to English translations. Swahili is an East African language. There are two groups. The control group was studying, then again studying the same concept, then again studying the same concept, and then again studying the concept. In experiment group, they tested, they studied, they tested and studied, and this is what they found out. In case of study, it was 60% of the recalls. After 1 week, when students were tested, they were able to recall 60% of the words. But in the case of group, which was first tested, then studied, then tested, then studied, it was substantial difference. There was more than 90% of recall. Again, an important study was conducted by Andrew Butler in his PhD thesis. Butler did take about this was much of the text here. It's not simple Swahili to English words, but scientific text which talks about bat location, something out of which was straight away pulled out of a science textbook, which was tough to read. And again, the two groups, one was the control group and the second was the experiment group. In first group, they tested and restudied, tested and restudied. In other group, they did only restudied. 1 week later, final new test was conducted with new inferences, and this is what they found out. The retention in case of group which was just involved in restudying was only 30%, whereas the group which was involved in practice test was 60%. The same was true with respect to facts and concepts. In both of them, people who did practice test, who did restudy, performed very well. Retrieval practice is very effective when it's followed by feedback. You take test, identify what are the questions which you could not answer, find out the correct answer from that and move forward. That is a very good way of taking test. Practice test requires recall. You practice recall. Close your textbook, close your notebook, try to recall what you have studied. Responses are eventually correct. Do this practice recall until unless you get your answers correct. You can implement a retrieval practice using flashcards. You can use note taking, go for corner notes in case you want to have a best way of taking notes. Uh, Take everyday tests that are going to improve your performance. Retrieval practice talks about what to do, but distributive practice is about when to do. In distributed practice, you're spreading out across the time. You, instead of studying 4 hours in a stretch, divide that 4 hours into 1 hour study stretch sessions over a period of 4 days. Study 1 hour today, 1 hour tomorrow, 1 hour the day after, and 1 hour the day after. Study relevant material, restudy the same material, restudy the same material, restudy the same material. It was a very important research which was conducted by Cornell. uh, in test and study trials or test and study trials, eight tests, students studied 8 times in one day. In one control group, in experiment group, students studied two today, did a test restudy 2 times today, 2 times tomorrow, 2 times the day after, across 4 days. And this was what was found out. In case of in 8 times on one day, the total recall was only 20%, whereas when it was 2 times on 4 days, the total recall was 60%. This is significant. Distributive factors is very much essential for long-term retention of any kind. Is most effective when it is distributed across the session. Distributive practice, also coupled with other strategies for learning, will give phenomenal results. After distributed learning, this is what Bharik has to say in 1979. Much of what is learned during first exposure is forgotten during the interval between exposures and must be relearned after to become a part of semi-permanent knowledge. One can therefore conceive of total acquisition process as a cycle of acquisition, loss, and requisition. This is what the research we have discussed earlier with respect to Butler shows. Much of the learning we study, we forget, we learn, we learn, we forget, we learn. So much of the what we study is forgotten. So we need to study it successively over a period of time, and we do this. This is phenomenally going to improve our performance. This is what the experiment of Butler also shows. Uh, it's a 60% recall in the first week, whereas in second week, third week, after successive relearning, the performance is even better. In the field of learning and memory is to inform educational practice. What is evidently needed is much less emphasis on convenient single session studies. Please stop single session studies. Opt for distributive practice, properly coupled with retrieval practice and successive learning. These techniques are going to significantly improve your performance. Power of successive relearning method. Again, Swahili English transaction. This was a research undertaken by Wand and Lasky and Rawson. In one sessions, they performed revision till they got a particular thing correct for 7 times. Whereas in another experiment group, what they did is they continue till one correct recall. Now 1 week delay in each session. Second week they again study till they get correct all the correct ones. Third week they again restudy till they get everything correct ones. And this is what I found out. Successive relearning. At the end of third week, the improvement from first week to third week was phenomenal. Successive relearning really improves your performance. Retention after 1 week is significant successful learning. This, if you are doing something, this is what your timetable should look like. You should also plan for retrieval practice. This should be distributed across the time, and this has to be successfully relearned. These three things are going to phenomenally improve learning. Study skills can definitely improve your achievement. Retrieval practice, this coupled with distributive practice and successfully learning will give phenomenal result. Evidence-based education is need of the hour. Erroneous beliefs in learning should be removed, and only uh, findings backed up by research are to be trusted. Thank you very much. Thank you.